A very common issue when people try to meditate. They say there's so many thoughts, I can't stop the thinking. Thoughts are too disturbing. So one way of addressing that issue is with a mantra meditation. A meditation where we actually using words, just a short sentence or even just one word, like Buddho, 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 or short sentence, what we were using just now in that guided meditation, Bhagava, Adahang, Buddho, Buddho, Adahang, Bhagava, Bhagava, Adahang, Buddho, Buddho, Adahang, Bhagava. Or a little formula for loving kindness. May all beings be at ease, may all beings be at ease. So rather than trying to stop thinking completely, which can be difficult because we are so much conditioned, and in our society thinking is such a big thing that just out of habit and conditioning it may be difficult to completely stop thinking. But it may be easier to limit the thinking to just one sentence or just one word. It's still thinking. And doing that is usually already enough to generate a considerable amount of samatha, of mental focus, of samadhi in the wider sense. In particular, Samatha meditation, that means calmness meditation. Samadhi often translated as concentration. Some of this can be quite misleading, particular concentration, because concentration we perceive often as an intense effort, whereas samadhi, a real deep samadhi, is completely effortless and is connected with internal unification, in particular joy and rapture. As concentration we often see as maybe not particularly joyful, but really forcing the mind. But there's no real good English word for samadhi. Samatha meditation, calmness meditation, is actually a lot about developing emotion as a deliberate cultivation of a very wholesome emotion. So it can be helpful to look at your effort in samatha meditation as the deliberate cultivation of a certain wholesome emotion. Is also the cultivation of a particular perception. These things go together. Particular in the way of perceiving something, for example, the breath as beautiful, as calm and soothing. Or for example, the Buddha, you have the perceptions of someone exalted, special, trustworthy. You develop the emotion of faith, confidence, respect, awe, affection, devotion. When we develop Buddha-nussati, when we recollect the Buddha. And I think what easily happens if you just say in English, a recollection of the Buddha, contemplating the Buddha, remembering the Buddha, it sounds like a purely intellectual exercise. Whereas in reality it is about developing that emotion of confidence, joyful confidence, faith, devotion, affection. And the term recollecting of the Buddha may not necessarily bring that out so much. In particular for kind of Western Buddhists or someone who came to Buddhism later in life. Just today at noon, a mother came up with a little daughter, maybe 6-7 years old. And she had done this little figure here, this wooden figure, which I put into the flowers. And that is meant to be a small bodhisattva, kind of baby Buddha, or toddler Buddha. And obviously if you do that at that young age, this brings you a certain conditioning. If you're already, when your mother is pregnant, you're bowing with her, you hear her chanting, you can almost like feel the emotion your mother has if she is already Buddhist, from pregnancy and then onwards. You go as a young child for the first time into a monastery, you see the Buddha, you see how everyone is worshipping that in the Buddha and what he represents. So it brings in a very powerful emotional conditioning. I had one experience on going alms round once in Sri Lanka when I was in Bundelakoti in the south. It was a kind of arranged alms round. I knew to which house I go every day. Then I would sit on the veranda usually, and then they would offer the food for the day, and I would go back to the kuti. And this day, and there was a young mother, and she had this little young boy. And when I came, she was teaching the little child the name for a monk. In this case, you would just call me a sadhu. A sadhu. But sadhu also means good in Sinhalese. So there's the name for a monk and the name for good is the same. But what I noticed, she wasn't teaching so much just the intellectual notion, the concept, the word, sadhu, but she was obviously taking huge efforts of teaching the child the emotion she felt that a monk is coming to her home to receive alms food. She wouldn't just say, this sadhu, she would say, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. You could see this whole feeling she has. She's so happy that a monk comes and she can offer alms food. She feels faith, devotion, confidence that she can offer dana to a monk, that they're coming to their house. And that was all conveyed in the way she was teaching this word to the little child. And if you go up like that, you obviously have a huge emotional connotation. And I think that's one reason that often for Asian monks, for people who are born in Buddhist families and get that conditioning from pregnancy onwards, I think they often find it easier to just repeat Buddho, Buddho, Buddho than, say, Westerners who became Buddhists when they were adults. Because you often don't have that same deep emotional conditioning. And my feeling is for the average born Buddhist, particularly if it's in a family with strong faith, the moment when they think Buddho, they don't have to do much. This strong feeling of emotion and devotion and so on, it just comes up quite automatically. Whereas if you're a Western Buddhist and you came to Buddhism later in life, and maybe it was a more intellectual approach, the teaching and the content of the teaching appealed to you and so on, and then you just think or repeat Buddho, Buddho, but emotionally not that much may be happening. And one has to build up that emotional resonance body. I like to give the simile, I really like our bell, it's actually not that big. But I really like this, for that size, it's a really beautiful resonant sound, and it lingers and it stays for quite a while. But this is more like someone with a very strong early life, deep conditioning of faith and devotion to the Buddha. And then when you say Buddho, this is like bang, and it's this big resonance emotionally. And then if one came later to Buddhism and more from the intellectual side, it's more like ringing a little, something like this. It's not quite the same, the emotional richness if you say Buddho, Buddho. But we can build that up. And each time we do a Buddha puja, each time we go on pilgrimage in India, each time we bow and deliberately try to develop that perception, each time we put our little shrine and offer something to the Buddha, it builds up this resonance body. I remember I think in Nalanda, in KL, in the Nalanda Buddhist Center, they have this gigantic bell. It's really nice, boom, very powerful. And if we build up the faith, devotion in the Buddha through puja, through pilgrimage, through reading about the Buddha's life, even studying the Dhamma and then reflecting that this all comes from the Buddha, and then we build up that resonance body, it will be more powerful. Another thing, once we talk about in particular Samatha meditation, of developing emotion, deliberately, methodically developing certain wholesome emotions. Think of it like that. Of course, insight meditation is different. That is less the developing emotion, that is developing wisdom, insight, seeing things as they truly are. But even that will trigger certain emotions like nibbida, disenchantment, repulsion without aversion, but just getting disinterested in all sankharas. But especially Samatha meditation is a lot about developing emotion. And people feel emotions throughout their life in all postures. Do you have, in order to feel love, do you have to sit cross-legged? When you meet your grandchild, will you feel love and affection only after you sit down properly cross-legged in full lotus? Or if you meet your bosom enemy, the person who hurt and harmed you so much, and you see them or you hear their voice, do you have to go into a special retreat, into a completely quiet room in order to be able to feel anger? It's funny that they can do it in any posture. They can do it while they're working, while they're cooking, while they're driving, while they're reading emails, while they are doing anything. They can feel love, they can feel anger, jealousy, all the emotions, they can feel them. But now it comes to meditation, developing maybe faith or devotion. And they have to be on a special retreat in a special room, and it has to be completely silent and no disturbing sound. And they need a special cushion in order to meditate at the right height, and that they can sit absolutely perfectly. Wouldn't it be funny, someone dragging around a special cushion each time they want to get angry? If they can do it at any moment, they just see that person and the anger is right there, powerful. So this shows you don't need all this. Don't make meditation this super special thing where you have to be in a retreat completely out of your normal life situation, on a special seat and a special posture in front of a big Buddha Rupa. See it more like you can have emotions in any moment in your life. So similar, we can remember the Buddha. I mean, the American election is over, but even here in Australia, I know many people who devoted an amazing percentage of their life, of their hours, about thinking about particular American politicians. Isn't it amazing? They can do it. They find it hard not to think about that. Or when they're in love, people are in love, and it's difficult for them not to think about the person they're in love with. They don't have to make any effort at all to think about the person they love. It would take a huge effort not to think about them. The person where you have this deep grudge and resentment, it takes a huge effort not to think about them. effortlessly for hours. You can't sleep all night because the anger keeps you awake. And here we have the Buddha, totally awakened, supreme wisdom, supreme psychic power, supreme compassion, all virtues you can think of to the highest extent. And then it's suddenly so difficult to think a half an hour about him. Isn't that weird? So it definitely can be done, and you can do that throughout your day. Lungta Mahabua, maybe the best known direct disciple of Ajahn Mun, and he established his basic samadhi, his foundational meditation with Buddho. He got very upset after his mind would come together and he could experience samadhi, and then it would deteriorate again. And then finally he made just the determination that he would just keep with Buddho, whatever he does, all day. Whether sitting or walking meditation, whether going arms round or sweeping or holding water or doing whatever duties he has. And then he succeeded with iron determination, steel-like determination, just Buddho, Buddho all the time. It can be done. Just like you can think about your favorite beloved or your favorite enemy. It should be even easier to think about the Buddha all day. And it just feels so much better, at least so much better than thinking about the enemy. It's uplifting. So all these mantra meditations, they're ultimately not about the words. The words, the mantra, the formula, this sentence we repeat, the word we repeat. This is just a tool to generate that emotion in our heart. And it's really about that emotion. And in particular, the feeling connected with that emotion, that happy feeling, that joyful feeling, that gladness that will ultimately develop into rapture and bliss. And the rapture and bliss is that leads the mind into samadhi. The rapture and bliss is that allows the mind to let go of all the sense impressions because it's so strong. So it's good to be aware of that. It's difficult to force an emotion, but it's good to know that this is the aim, that we aspire to develop that emotion. And then while you're repeating the mantra, you're a little bit on the lookout, you have sharp mindfulness, not only going for these words, but at the same time having some wider awareness that is generally helpful. Not just the meditation object, but also having some awareness of your mind, your heart in general. And then you can notice when the intended emotion comes up in the heart. And the moment you notice it, you can give it some attention. And thus giving it attention, that usually leads to that emotion growing. In particular, as we are continuing repeating the mantra, Bhagava Adahang Buddho Buddho Adahang Bhagava, and these words are already triggering that emotion, bringing it up. And then if additionally you're aware, you notice that the emotion comes up now and give it some attention, then it can flourish and grow. And that is so much the point in Samatha meditation. And of course, remembering the Buddha and then feeling the emotion of joyful confidence, faith, affection, devotion. This is an incredible wholesome emotion, so it feels good. And you can notice how it ennobles and brightens your mind and makes the mind bright, radiant, light, aware. And all these other samadhi qualities come up because the emotion is so good, wholesome, so uplifting, so buoyant, so light and bright. And that is the point, to get that brightness. that joy. And again, all the emotions, you can have them throughout your life, any posture, any situation. When people are angry, it doesn't matter that there's someone talking in the background. You may not even hear when people are shouting at you because you're so much in the anger. Same when they're in love. And it doesn't mean that if there's a little bit of chainsaw noise in the distance that you can't feel the love anymore. But when it comes to meditation, then suddenly, I can't meditate because there's some sound. So do it just like with the other emotions. Must be possible, isn't it? If it's possible with the other emotions, it should actually be easier because the Buddha is so unique and so special. And people may say when they're in love, this person is also so special. But ask them about that 20 years later, after the divorce, whether the person is so special. They're obviously not so special. And the person we are so angry with is also not so special. You may think your devoted enemy is the worst person in the world, but there are much worse people than your favorite enemy, I'm pretty sure. And certainly the Buddha is something much more special. And in particular, Buddhanussati, I think, is a good one. If you have really strong, unwholesome emotions or really struggling, you're close to breaking a precept, you feel really overwhelmed by a strong emotion, getting really down or getting really carried away by craving and desire and so on. Now I recommend, for example, walking, fast walking, and at the same time the Buddho, Buddho, Buddho with every step, Buddho, Buddho. That can be very powerful and cut through whatever unwholesome stuff is going on there in your mind. Okay, a few reflections about deliberately developing emotions, samatha meditation, not so much as concentration. Because concentration, I think in English, it doesn't give at all the sense that I'm developing a particular emotion and feeling, isn't it? Concentration sounds like something very mental and maybe focusing on concepts, reading something that is really lacking there in that translation. But samatha, the way the Buddha teaches, is a lot about developing a particular wholesome emotion and a feeling. Next Saturday, the 8th of February, 8:30 a.m. in the morning, on the top of Dhammagiri Hill on the summit, the placing of the official formal foundation stone for the Saddhamma Cetiya. Our Sangha of 4 monks will be chanting Pavita. Our lay guest, Harley, will be cementing the foundation stone onto the plinth while we are chanting. Anyone who likes to join, you're heartily invited, welcome. I have to say, if someone is elderly or frail, it may be a bit difficult. The site is still very rough. One can drive up with the cars to the top area, but then there's still quite some distance walking up to the summit on a non-surfaced road and then uneven surface around the stupa. But if that is no problem for you, if you feel confidence to handle that. And ideally, if you're really fit, you may want to walk up the hill. That would make it easier, that we don't have too many cars up there. Okay, so next Saturday, 8:30 a.m. in the morning.